I think they're quicker, more agile, more innovative.
Well, welcome to Serious Social. Here we are again on Friday, freezing cold Friday. Apparently looking forward to a bit of snow. But today we've got a wonderful guest. So everyone loves social media and China is no exception. In fact, the numbers when it comes to reach and engagement blow Facebook and Insta and Twitter out of the water. It's the largest social media market in the world with 931 million active monthly users. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But in China, social is nothing like the platforms that we use here in the West, and advertising and algorithms and influencers are all unique to China. So I thought I'd bring along a fantastic expert, and I'm joined today by Dominica, who I consider to be the UK's expert on the China market and social media. She is CEO of, I'm just adding it to the live stream. There we go. Hi, Dominica, CEO of Emerging Communications. And she and her team are helping brands navigate the very different social media landscape, both in consumer and B2B. So there'll be, if you're a B2B brand watching, there will be stuff for you. So yeah, welcome, Dominica. I'll put your details in the feed shortly, but tell us more about your agency, why you set up and what you do.
Morning, Katie. Lovely to see you as always. And lovely to see you all on this live stream this morning. So why did we set up Emerging Communications? I've been in this market now 10 years. In the China market, I could see the way that it was headed even 10 years ago, that innovation, AI have always been so much further forward in China. And we set up Emerging Communications to do two things really with brands. We're fundamentally growing brands in China, but to do that, we have to build their reputation, which is largely built on social media, but also online PR as well. And by building reputation and trust, you can obviously grow Chinese brands in terms of sales and leads, depending on whether you're B2B or B2C. But in addition to that, there's two major things that we do that I don't think other agencies do. And one of those things is to integrate teams. So in China, if you've got a sales team, a distributor or an agent, you need to integrate their effort with what you're doing with your marketing effort. And finally, you need to accelerate that. So obviously, as you grow and we grow with brands, then we begin to accelerate them. So we might leverage more social media channels. We might leverage other channels such as search or programmatic or so on and so forth. But all of this is underpinned by knowing the customer. So, you know, we're going to talk a lot about Chinese social today, but so many brands come to us and say, we want to be on WeChat. And I'm like, that's great. You'll be talking to yourself if you don't have any customers following you. It's literally like having a channel talking to yourself and your team. So really, fundamentally, everything is underpinned by who are you talking to, who your audience is in China. And I don't mean, if I have one more client say, I want to target women who are 24 to 40. It doesn't work like that. Who are the clusters? What's their behavior? Because we can then, once we drill into that, we can figure out where they hang out and we can put together the right campaigns. But we'll talk about that a bit later. So that's what we do and why we do it. Yeah.
And do you know what? That is exactly what it is here. We have exactly the same challenge. Yeah. You know, the amount of times I hear people say, well, this campaign is targeting Gen Z. And I'm like, yeah, right, okay. I know I'm Gen X, right? I'm Gen X. It's a really big category. We're actually the smallest generation, but it's a big category. I am not like other 50-plus-year-old women. I can tell you that right now.
Neither of us are.
We're all different, you know. And clusters really matter. But let's backtrack a little bit, and if you could give us, for those that maybe don't know the China market, because we hear a lot about Weibo and WeChat. We don't actually hear about some of the other channels that are there and what the landscape is like. And I will throw up I will put up some numbers down below. MAUs are monthly active users and DAUs are daily active users. Just look at those numbers. But would you explain to us a little bit more, Dominica, about the landscape in China?
Absolutely. So the reason I mentioned consumers is all of these social media channels have been launched and driven by consumer behavior. So a couple of years ago, when I was in the China market, you really had the landscape dominated by WeChat, owned by Tencent, and Weibo. And now you have got a plethora of channels. In fact, there are thousands of them. But probably the most important to note are WeChat, Weibo, Douyin, and I'll talk about the difference between Douyin and TikTok, Bilibili, but you've also got, for the B2B world, Juhu, which we haven't even mentioned, which is like a Quora Q&A. Oh my goodness, Little Red Book, which is absolutely ginormous now and has taken the world by storm, especially for anything in travel, hospitality, retail, property. And there are thousands more. And I think the biggest difference, well, there are many differences between China and the West, is that historically a lot of B2B brands shy away from a lot of social media, thinking it's not what we do. We've never done that. In China is absolutely critical and essential to build your reputation on social media, because no matter what you do, that's where people are going to look for recommendation. They're going to look for what people have said about your service or your product. Even in some really complex industries that we deal with, pharma, biotech, engineering, financial services, investment, we're using social media to drive reputation and engagement, and sometimes leads, sales, depending on the channel. So yes, it's very, very, very fragmented landscape, but it is kind of dominated by about 5 players. Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's really interesting because you've mentioned some of the opportunities for brands, and we're going to dig into that in a minute. But what is so different about Chinese social media? Because it is different.
It is different. I think the biggest difference that I see is that social media is intrinsically part of consumer behavior. It's not, I will go onto WeChat to make a call. It's actually, I'll go onto WeChat to book an appointment with my doctor, because that's the only way to do it. And I will pay for something through my WeChat Pay or my Alipay. I will order a taxi through WeChat. So it's intrinsically part of behavior. That's the first thing. Secondly, word of mouth referrals are a massive part of culture in China. If you want to spend money on a property, for example, the chances are you will ask somebody that you trust, where did you buy? Why did you buy there? And you'll still do your due diligence. You'll still go onto social, but you will ask people's opinions. And so a lot of these social media channels in China have come about from opinion. And one of those is Little Red Book. It's pretty much a KOC, so a key opinion consumer channel, where key opinion consumers build their own audiences and they choose to work with certain brands and not with others. And they have large followings of people that want to know about what they have to say. So I think really it's a difference in behavior has driven a difference in channels. For those of you who have very little experience of Chinese social media, it's worth noting that there's 2 things of note, really. One is all of the Western channels are blocked. That's Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp. If you talk about search, Google has less than 1% reach in China. So all of those, they're all blocked in China. So you don't actually have any choice but to become friends with Chinese social channels anyway. But we often have brands saying to us, well, I don't want to do China yet, Domenica, we're doing the US first, or we're doing Europe first. Just be aware that you will find that consumers are buying your products and services, and they are having an opinion about it, and they are spreading that narrative on Chinese social, whether you're controlling it or not. And you need to really find somebody, us or somebody, an expert who reads Mandarin and who understands Chinese social, to come back to you on a regular basis and say what your customers are saying about your product or service. So reputation is everything in China, and you have 2 choices. You either control that narrative or you let somebody else control it for you, which is very risky indeed. And that's a really big issue in China. So really it's consumer behavior has driven these channels. And for example, there are a lot of e-commerce channels that have sprung up, and obviously social and e-commerce are intrinsically linked now. You see a live stream and you buy something, and just for very discrete segments, like, for example, the over 70s. And you know, and so in China, we don't look at age groups, we look at behavior. We look at clusters of Chinese consumers that behave in a similar way, tribes, if you want to call it, clusters, and that's really what's driven the channels to evolve over time. Like Bilibili, which used to be a very, very sort of niche channel, is now a humongous channel that basically engages large age groups and clusters, whereas it used to be quite a niche channel. It's changed a lot over the last couple of years. Yeah.
It's fascinating because there are similarities in the way that we plan. So behaviors, exactly as you say, tribes, clusters, segments, exactly the same. But there are also massive differences, and it can be quite confusing because particularly for people like me who are very visual, visibility is so trying to understand it can be quite challenging. I understand there's a difference between Douyin, is that how I pronounce it?
Yeah,
and TikTok, because what we're seeing here of the Chinese channels here is not maybe what they're seeing in China, is it?
No, I mean, that's a really good example of evolution in China. So Douyin in China has a much bigger reach in terms of age and demographic and clusters it appeals to, whereas TikTok here is what my daughter uses, and she's 11. She creates dances on it. Douyin in China is a video channel, and it's an engagement channel, and the algorithms are different, and what you are allowed to do on it is very different. And I think that's the fundamental thing to understand, is every single one of these social channels, all of the narrative and content has to be approved by the government. So we have to be careful what we say. There are words we can't use. For example, for some of you out there in investment categories, property categories, pharma, biotech, there are words we cannot use. For example, on social or on any marketing, you can never say you're the best, you're number one, even if you can back it up. And there are words you can't use. And so that's just one of the many challenges in China, but it doesn't mean it's difficult. You just need to work with somebody that knows what they're doing and is leveraging the right channel for your brand and is controlling that narrative to build reputation so that you can grow followers and leads and sales that way. But it is also about not spreading yourself too thin. So I say to brands, leverage 2 channels properly. Don't try and be on all of them and not do a good job. And so many brands will use the cost per post as a measure as to what a good agency is, which is nonsensical. There's no point having a Weibo channel and doing 40 posts of absolute crap. No, it's a complete pointless exercise. Your audience is not going to engage. They're going to turn off. They'll defollow you. They'll just think, well, they're not committed to the market. They don't understand me. You'd be better off to do 4 posts and make it really engaging. Same with WeChat. And the same when you create any asset. It's just got to hit the mark. You've got to understand your audience. So it's not about numbers. It's about quality.
Yeah. It's the same goals, isn't it? It's exactly the same here in the West. It's this daft idea that you can say, well, how many tweets will we get for that?
Oh my god!
And you look at it and go, well, you can get 200 shit tweets or 3 good ones that actually make a difference. Being blunt, it's a Friday, but just on that point of quality, what struck me this year, maybe the last couple of years, is the amazing creativity of China's social media campaigns. They're just, some of them are mind-blowing, whether they're 3D projections or out of home connected to social really seamlessly, the ability for commerce to really be that center point of the way that social works. What for you are the most standout campaigns, or the ones you've seen that you've thought, crikey, that is just another level?
I think let's just take the beauty industry as a good example, and then I'll have a couple of others. The beauty industry is so different in China because it's seen and deemed as being, and I happen to agree, totally unhygienic to be trying a makeup on in a Sephora or in a Watson's, or if you go to a very upmarket store. So you don't. So you have AI mirrors. So you stand there and you basically can try lipstick on, And this has been going on for years. I've not obviously been able to get to China the last 2 years with COVID. So we're talking, this was 2017-18. This was commonplace. But COVID has just accelerated that. And now what you have is you can do this online. You can do it literally through your phone. And I might want to buy a lipstick and I want to know what it looks like. And there will be a virtual mirror that will pop up onto a social media channel. I think it's incredible. So the use of AI and gamification has completely, I would say, accelerated in the last 18 months, because the beauty category has completely recovered with COVID and has actually overtaken 2019. So 20 took over 19, because they just basically found ways to make it really easy to buy. So I think that's, and a lot of the brands that you might imagine, the Estee Lauders of this world, are very established in China. But I think what I've seen that's just blown me away, and we talked about this morning, is a couple of years ago when I was in Shenzhen, I saw an out-of-home AI advert and I literally couldn't believe it. And this was back end of 2019, one of the first places to do it. And then I was in Piccadilly Circus yesterday and went to have a look at a recent advert that has the first time I've ever seen it in the UK. So that's nearly 3 years or 2 years it's taken to come here. So what's happening in China is coming over here. And we're talking about a 3D advert that looks so real. You've literally got, the one I saw in Shenzhen was actually a car. I believe it was a Ford, but I can't remember. Literally was as if it was driving at you and you're literally, and whereas I saw that in the UK yesterday. And so that's taken 2 years to get here. So the use of AI technology, not just for out of home, on social media channels, on WeChat mini programs, on the likes of Douyin and Bilibili, it's just absolutely out of this world. It just blows you away. And finally, sort of like social commerce. So brands that we know and love here that have done really well in China, like H&M and Clarks England, it's called in China. They've done it by really understanding their audiences. And you've got an awful lot of brands that are doing really, really well in China. And they're doing it because there are literally virtual live stream catwalks with key opinion leaders and bloggers. And you can buy the items immediately from a live stream. That is really, really commonplace. I do it. I did it on 11/11 Singles Day, bought some stuff from Taobao, bought some stuff from Tmall. And of course, today is Black Friday, which is much more of a Western thing, but it's, absolutely incredible. So I love the fact I don't have to go to any changing rooms. That's for me a real biggie. I can't be bothered. I'm too old and nobody wants to look at your body when you're my age. So I think it's brilliant. And I just think that there is just no line anymore. We used to talk about it in the 1990s, through the line, above the line. It just doesn't exist.
No.
It's that I'm a consumer. And if I want to, for example, you can't do this here, but if you're in China, you can be on a live stream. And for example, you might be looking at a foundation and you've used a mirror, a virtual mirror, but you're not quite sure that the color's right. You can then literally on WeChat talk to a sales rep at the local Sephora and arrange for them to go and do a color match. I mean, it's a different world. It's a different world. And and I think what's coming here and what brands need to recognize, B2B and B2C, is experiential marketing, which we've been talking about here in the UK for years, but nobody does it properly. In other words, you go into a store for an experience or to get something you can't get online, but it's all one big journey. I might go in there and then I might buy online at home or in the store. But you have to add value with experience. Otherwise, you've got to ask yourself, what's the point in having a store? Or what's the point in, I don't know, selling a property that's over £1 million to somebody who can't currently come over because of closed borders? You've got to bring that entire property alive through video, through AI technology, through, floor plans. You've got to pretend they're in your sales suite.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I've seen accelerate in the last year, particularly, is brands recognizing that people aren't traveling like they were. But they're still buying like they were. So how can you bring what you have to them without them actually physically being there? And that's AI. And it's really taken off. in terms of
marketing. I couldn't. And it's on that point, actually, there's some really interesting parts, which is, so for anybody who knows Immediate Future, we don't work with the China market. We actually work with Dominica and her team instead, because they know what they're doing and they've got people with feet on the ground out there. But one of the reasons why I wanted to do this live stream is, even if you're not in the China market, or maybe that's in your roadmap but not today, what's happening in China is coming here. I mean, we're not just talking about TikTok. We're not just talking about live stream shopping, which everybody is talking about at the moment. There is so much around the creativity and the interconnectivity of social in China that is actually beginning to be adopted here. And I think it's becoming those signals that will tell us what we need to know that's coming down the line, because the adoption is happening amongst consumers and customers. Even if the brands are a bit slow.
Absolutely. Somebody at the door, perfect timing. But I know I'll leave them
my door.
So basically, absolutely. So I talked a little bit about home. So that's taken 2 years to come here. But I think fundamentally what China has showed us here in the West is that consumers are driving technology. So consumers' wants and needs are driving change on these channels. And that's happening over here. We only have to look at our kids and COVID and lockdown and how they have really, I mean, gamification, gaming has had a whole new resurgence, really. And that then being integrated with commerce, I'm seeing happening already over here. Experiential marketing is already happening. And the use of video, which we haven't mentioned, which is absolutely intrinsic to success in China, is now intrinsic to success everywhere. Let's face it, especially the younger generations, they're just not going to buy or trust you unless they see customers talking positively about you, and unless you can be emotive. So emotional connections, really understand what drives them. And I really believe that the days of just cut and paste marketing, which I see every day for some of the biggest brands in the world, they're dead in the water. It's just not going to cut through anymore. It's too much noise. It's too fragmented. People are too busy. And people are too busy, no matter what age they are. Because think back to, you're the same age as me, literally the same age as me. You think back to when we started working. I mean, I literally didn't even have a computer. I had a PA. I used to type up my letters. I used to do my business. And this is like £1 million contracts over lunch. I had business cards. Things have completely moved on. Now you have people contacting you on about 15 channels a day. You're constantly interrupted. You've got adverts everywhere on whatever channel you're on. So it really is the emotional connection stuff that I'm seeing in China, that China's really good at, especially local brands more than Western brands. I think that is going to start to really take off over here. And it really understanding audiences. And the other thing that's just blown me away recently, which is a relatively new thing, is, for example, you might have a poster in China and you might just have an air conditioning unit just sat there. Or you might have somebody sat on a bench that is actually part of the marketing, and they might be a consumer. I recently saw that and I posted on my LinkedIn. So the world of offline and online is just all one big thing now. And I think we're going to start seeing some really creative out of home and social campaigns coming over here, which are about emotional connection. And it really isn't the big boys that are absolutely doing well in China. Beauty, I'd say, is quite established, but other categories, B2B, property, universities, education, is all about emotional connections in China. And it's some of the local players are doing a phenomenal job in food and beverage, some white goods. It's just the old-fashioned way of doing it isn't going to cut it. And we still do have press here. I know it has a lot less notoriety, but in China you really don't. If you want to find out what's going on, you're not going to open a newspaper. So it really is just one big ecosystem of an audience engaging with you. And the other thing that we've seen here, we have influencers here. But in China, you pay for them. And in China, the influencer has a great deal of power and will choose if they want to work with a brand. Are they committed to the China market? You know, do they fit me as an individual and my followers? They're very fussy. They are actually not just a media resource, they're a necessity. And we're not seeing that here yet, but we will. And I think that the influencer market is going to become probably the biggest opportunity and threat to brands who don't embrace it properly. And I don't even think that's just China. I think that is just generally our kids and generations slightly younger than us, which is pretty much everybody. I think that they are very cynical, and they've been brought up with this need to be pleased immediately, this immediacy. And everybody's going to have to speed up and accelerate in terms of what they're doing. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. Because I think
it's all about doing it properly, isn't it? I mean, as you said,
yes.
I see. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm about to sneeze.
Oh, bless you.
Bless you. Nothing like a live stream. Actually, Alexandra has just asked a really interesting question. I'm just popping it up, but for those that maybe watch this later and can't see it when the subtitles cover it up, she says, this is super interesting, ladies. The potential for live streaming AI is just incredible over and above the conventional live streaming. Do you feel the direction the Facebook Metaverse is heading? What do you think?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person, because I only know China. I'm afraid that's more of a question for you. I think the trends that we are seeing as commonplace in China are going to come here? Absolutely. I'm not an expert on Western social channels. I'm only really active on LinkedIn. I only know the Chinese ones because that keeps me on my toes. So that's more of a question for you, Katie. Yeah. Do I think the behavior is going to change? Absolutely. Yeah. Do I think Facebook is an innovative channel? I think there are other channels that could be adopting this quicker, because Facebook just, if you speak to my daughter, she'll go, oh, I'm never going on Facebook because all my friends' parents are on there. All the olds are on there. So she spends her time on Instagram and TikTok. I think other channels are likely to embrace it quicker. I think they're quicker, more agile, more innovative. And I think this is the key point. I could be eating my words, by the way, is that a lot of the Western channels, and in fact, a lot of Western brands, take too long to make decisions because they've historically always, and let's just talk about the big corporates. They've got a digital department, an international department, probably a global media agency that doesn't even understand China or the APAC markets, and then they might have a PR agency. Do they speak to each other? No. That isn't the way it works in China. And that's what's about to change. People are going to start going, we're doing a campaign, we're targeting this cluster. Let's get everybody together that does marketing in this organization and let's be on the same page. That's what has to change. And I think only then that behavioral change of people actually speeding up, making decisions quicker, getting campaigns out that are really going to resonate because you've got them out within 2 hours of something happening. See a lot of that in China, and you don't, and I know you guys do a brilliant job of it with your clients, but I really despair at how slow people are. Yeah,
it's just it's almost like we don't want to restructure our businesses to be to deliver customer experience no matter what the channel is, and it is a huge bugbear because it is sometimes quite intangible as to how you get to the end game. And it's a struggle to persuade people that the investment has to be quite large to make a difference because your audience matters to you, not because of what you spend. But to answer Alexandra's question, I would say absolutely that's the whole point of Metaverse, whether that's the whole Facebook group or the Meta group, as they're called now, from Instagram to WhatsApp to the whole idea, I think, is that they are seeing what's happening. They are too slow to move, but Facebook has really grown and the Facebook group has grown by either buying or copycatting. So they're just copycatting. So yes, absolutely, they're trying to position themselves, and the push for VR is exactly the same as Snapchat's absolutely massive push for AR. augmented reality is probably the next phase here that we'll see a lot more of, which is second nature in China.
Absolutely. Expected in China.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think it's very different. You mentioned, we've only got a few more minutes, but I really want to cover this off because you talked about moments and being in the moment. And of course, today's Black Friday and I shall be rushing off to make lots of useless purchases at some point.
Yeah, of course.
Why not? China has some really significant days that matter to how you behave in social media. Do you want to just talk through some of those?
Well, firstly, if you're talking about shopping, then it's 11/11, Singles Day, which was actually created by the Alibaba Group, but now actually transcends all channels in China and isn't just one day. It's normally a 2-week campaign. It blows everything out of the water. Billions and billions in a 24-hour period are sold online. So it's an online festival. But also what's very important to Chinese consumers is Chinese New Year, because it's the longest holiday. I'll get on to Golden Week in a second. So you see a lot of campaigns around connection and family and food, because that is what Chinese New Year is about in China. You go home to your family. And there was a lot of beautiful, emotive, and actually real tear-jerking marketing that I saw on social around Chinese New Year 2020, because of course they were in lockdown and nobody could go home, and it was absolutely heart-wrenching for everybody. It's a migration of billions of people every year. Then Golden Week historically has been when, and this is 1st to the 8th of October, when Chinese consumers have traveled outside of China to go on holiday, because it's the longest national holiday, and then they tag on annual leave. Very normal to have a couple of weeks off at Golden Week, and it ties in with the national holiday, Chinese national holiday. But of course, with borders being what they've been, what that has now led to is domestic travel in China, and has just gone through the roof, because international travel isn't possible unless you're willing to quarantine for 3 to 5 weeks when you get back, which is what my team are doing to go home. They're just working in quarantine hotels, I know. So basically that's changed it slightly. And then you've got other things. So you have 12/12, which is another smaller shopping festival, but you have Mid-Autumn Festival in October, which is around the moon dates, when we have moon cakes, but also that's another shopping festival. So I think it's more to understand, if you understand your consumers in China, you understand what drives them and their emotions, or you'll also understand that there are certain dates where you might do different creative, or you might encourage them to spend money, but you do it in a way that is akin with that festival. And there are many, many of them. There are more bank holidays in China than we have here, but they have less annual leave overall than we do here. And they work very long hours. And some of the most creative campaigns I've seen recently are around 886, which is literally working 8 in the morning to 8 at the night, six days a week. Wow. And I know, and really focusing on the fact that you don't have any time, and you're tired, and some of the really sort of comical stuff. There's a coffee brand that's done a really good job of it. In other words, you need to drink our coffee and then you can get through the day, sort of thing. But it's a very comical, they do it through cartoons, and that's a really creative way of using social media to really understand your audience. But there are millions of examples of that. About connections, emotional connections. But there's been some outstanding creative on social in the last 18 months around not being able to travel and see people, and how that's really difficult for global Chinese, even down to global Chinese doing postgraduate study and undergraduate study here and having to spend a large chunk of it online. Imagine you come here for an experience and then you're not really in the classroom. Yeah. So there's been some beautiful, beautiful work. And there's been some of the viral stuff that I've seen recently isn't even KOLs or KOCs. It's literally just individuals that have built up followings around a common emotional thing. And there was an amazing thing that we shared a couple of weeks ago, a student that came over here, and of course they've been studying online and they're now able to come over and be in the classroom, and they shared their experience, their first couple of weeks. It just went viral because people understood it, they could connect with it. And when we work with our clients, we're always creating campaigns around user-generated content. So we'll find something amazing that a customer has said, and we'll use that as part of a campaign, because that's really compelling. much more compelling than saying we're the brand and we're amazing. You know, get one of your customers to say how amazing you are and do it in a creative way. So we're seeing a lot more of that, and we'll see a lot more of that over here. I'm pretty sure of it. Yeah.
So I could talk to you for hours, you know I could, Dominique, because I'm fascinated by it, because there's so many. I love the similarities, but I also really love the differences. And as we've spoken about, the creativity and innovation in China that is trending and predictive of trends here. So we have to wrap up, sadly.
Yeah,
but
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, I was going to ask you for your top 2 or 3 tips for people who are looking at really entering the Chinese market, and what do you think the first 2 or 3 things they should do, or they can't do without?
Absolutely. So I'd say, before you do anything, who's your audience? And if you don't have much budget, choose one cluster. Work out where they hang out. So don't try and leverage all the social channels because it's too expensive. Secondly, build a reputation. So build credibility on that channel with that audience, so people know about you, so that you can encourage those customers or those followers to share. It's not about follower numbers, by the way. It's about engagement, because you can buy followers really easily in China. Don't speak to an agency that talks about followers because they're talking crap. You want engagement, you want shares, you want comments. So you need to build a reputation is the first thing. The second thing is you need to think about how you can leverage what you have, what assets do you have within the business that you can localize, that are going to have a connection with that audience and have meaningful narrative, meaningful content. Try and be as creative as possible, even if you don't want to create new stuff. Look at what will resonate. And finally, make sure you measure, which you can do on Chinese social, so that you can go, that really worked, we'll do more of that. That didn't, we won't. So I would say be very, very targeted in your channels, and very, very targeted in your narrative, so that it resonates, it engages, and people share it. So less is more. Think about quality is what I would say, because you could spend all of your money, and if I had £1 for everybody who comes to me saying, I'm going to do a Chinese website, and I'm like, that's great, who's going to visit it? How are you going to send traffic? What are you going to say on it? Wouldn't you be better just building some reputation first? And people don't even know who you are. And I would actually say the other tip is do social listening. It's absolutely critical. A, it gives you opportunities for seeing what people are saying that's positive that you can leverage. Yeah. And B, if something negative is being said, you can stamp on it. You can take it offline. You can have a conversation. We do this all the time with our brand. You do not want to end up, the more reputation you build, the more you can fall, right? So if somebody has something bad to say, it needs to be dealt with straight away. And don't assume that you have no reputation, by the way, because even if you're not doing anything, chances are you do have customers. They are buying your product, even if it's not available in China. They could well be here. And you need to make sure you're controlling that narrative. So less is more. Quality. That's what I would say.
Love it. So it's exactly what we preach. Exactly.
That's why we work together.
Fundamentals are there, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much, Dominica. I think next year we have to have you back on, because I've got about 1 million more questions I haven't got to. So you're definitely.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
We're back. Pleasure.
All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.
So we're back not next week. We're back on the 9th, and it'll be CJ and Belle and me, all 3 of us together, talking about what's coming up, what are the trends, what matters for 2022. So definitely worth joining us on the 9th. It's a Thursday this time, partly because we have Christmas parties and things to go to. So join us on Thursday the 9th for our final Serious Social Live of the year. Thank you. Have a lovely Friday and a cracking weekend. Bye.